now 6:03 p.m., and I will call this online public meeting to order. It is June 7, 2023. My name is Andy Gregg, and I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Regular meetings and public hearings of the Clark County Historic Preservation Commission are held in a hybrid format, with both in-person and virtual participation options for commissioners, staff, and the public. This will allow for safe participation by commission members, staff, and any citizen interested in attending. For those of you joining remotely via computer, you should be able to see tonight's meeting agenda on your screen. If you can't see the screen and have joined by phone only, I will be announcing the agenda items as we move through the topics. Members of the public and applicants that have joined remotely are attendees. Other event participants cannot hear your audio unless you are acknowledged by the commission chair or staff and are unmuted. This evening's agenda is planned as follows: roll call and introductions, prior meeting notes approval, public comment for subjects other than public hearings on this meeting's agenda, as there will be specific public comment periods as part of the hearings, Washington State Historical Society dialogue in place, participation request, Main Street Promise update, discussion of upcoming Revitalize Washington Conference, old business updates and announcements that include new member recruitment, CAMP and other training, subcommittees, request for approval of membership payments, and the July 5th meeting. Prior to adjournment, we'll celebrate accomplishments and participation with good of the order. We will now have a roll call of HPC members who are present for this meeting. Commission members, please say, "I'm here," after I call your name. Jan Bader.
Here.
Julie Bond.
Here.
Let the record show that Morgan Frazier has an excused absence this evening. Heidi Mandler Huff.
Here.
Elaine Thatcher. Andy Gregg is here. We do have a quorum. Does anyone have any comments on the draft May 3 meeting notes? A motion for approval of the May 3 meeting notes. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the May 3 meeting notes be approved. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any public comments? Oh, welcome, Elaine.
Hello. Okay.
Are there anyone online?
Yes, we have a few people online. If you're using a computer or WebEx application on a mobile device, if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. There are instructions on how to do this on the screen. For anyone on the telephone audio only option, please dial *3 on your phone's number panel to raise your hand. And Holly Chamberlain has raised her hand. I will unmute you now.
Good evening, Holly.
Thank you, Andy. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and members of the public. This is Holly Chamberlain from the Historic Trust. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. At Providence Academy this past month, following a positive review from DAP of the preliminary archaeological report, the Academy's southeast parking renovation started on schedule on May 22nd and is going well. Project completion is expected by mid-August. The History Beneath Your Feet public archaeology education event on the afternoon of May 19th on the Academy's front lawn went well and attracted about 48 people. Staff from consultant AINW answered questions from the public while finishing investigation of 3 quarter test units, had site artifacts on view, and provided a flint knapping demonstration. A favorite comment came from a fifth grader who told the archaeologists that though he is an astronomer, he did find their work interesting. Building tours were also popular that day, with 24 attendees during the hours of the event. The preliminary archaeological findings report from this phase of testing is in preparation. The traditional visits to the Academy by teams of Providence Health Network staff, called Providence Pilgrimages, have resumed on a regular basis and with a greater frequency than pre-pandemic. Over at the Historic Reserve, the Grant House re-roofing project was started on May 22nd. Contractor Signature Roofing is making good progress and expects to be finished by the end of June. Interpretive panels detailing the building's history and rehabilitation and Grant's time at the barracks have been installed in the East Parlor for the benefit of people visiting and as part of the educational elements required to fulfill the goals of Heritage Capital Project grants. Many exterior painting projects are scheduled for over the summer months and are about to get started. At buildings 1 and 2, the 1885 mansard roof houses at the far west end of Officers Row. You may recall, those who've been on the commission for a while, that these two both recently received new roofs courtesy of Heritage Capital Projects funding and the City of Vancouver. The Trust is partnering with the city and other interested parties being assembled by the Washington State Historical Society to discuss the future of the society-owned First Monument located on Sister City property at the Historic Reserve. This year's round of chimney rehabilitations, the third of the 5-year project at the reserve, is underway. Vancouver Barracks Military Association and the Trust welcomed about 85 guests to the Red Cross building on May 25th for a panel discussion on Officers Row at 35, Origins, Preservation, and the Future in honor of National Historic Preservation Month. The large audience was clearly engaged and appreciative of the retrospective as well as the look to the future. Marshall House tour scripts are being updated for use by the docents. A new tour intended specifically for children has been developed as the Trust now frequently hosts groups of children from neighboring Vita Elementary. Upcoming in June for Summerfest are 2 opportunities on the 21st to celebrate the solstice, one in the morning and one in the evening, and also a porch concert and arts activities on Sunday the 25th, all at the Howard House. The second annual picnic in the park is set for July 1 on the row near Grant House. More information can be found at thehistorictrust.org. The Trust submitted its comments on the IBR Historic Baseline Context Report this past month and attended the Associated Neighborhood Forum on May 31st. The assessment of effects process is underway by IBR Cultural Resources Consultants, and they are expecting to issue the programmatic agreement concept draft for review by stakeholders this month. The comment period for the draft EIS is not expected to start until the end of 2023. The Vancouver Barracks Military Association June lecture will feature the history of sports and recreation at the Garrison. The program is set for Thursday, June 22nd at 6:30 p.m. at the Howard House. The speaker is retired local history teacher, author, and Marine Corps Reserve combat veteran Jeff Dacus. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Holly. Are there any other online comments?
No, there are not.
This concludes the general public comment portion of this meeting. Now we have a participation request from Washington State Historical Society for participation in a Dialogue in Place project. Staff, could you please outline this request?
So we included the request in your packet, and they are asking if the HPC would like to be involved in one of 2 ways, either through a consultation role, which would involve input, feedback, and recommendations at various points throughout the process, or in a public role, just to be kept informed and updated of project progress and dialogue through the general communications from the group. So we wanted to have you discuss this and how you would like to participate and how you'd like staff to be involved.
Any comments from fellow commissioners?
Did anybody go click the link and look at the piece of art? And you just heard Holly say the trust is going to be consulting on the project.
I think it would be valuable for us to participate as in a consulting role, and of course, that would then keep us up to date. But yeah, I think it's a very worthwhile project, and it would be really, I think, great if we were able to have someone involved on the commission.
Yes, I was reviewing this and I did look at the piece of artwork. I agree that we should be in a consultant role on this. And if any other individuals, I would like to be in the consulting position on this and follow this closely if no one else would like to do so.
I think this would fit really well in our outreach.
I agree. I actually started this process when I was still with the city. I had an art conservator clean up the monument so you could read the text, and in the no good deed goes unpunished category, discovered that, oh, so this wasn't probably super culturally sensitive.
It's amazing what happens when you can actually read the text.
Yeah. Little, maybe left it full of moss, but tried to talk the Washington State Historical Society into taking it back since it belongs to them, but it's so large that they declined.
Finding a place to put it would be interesting.
Probably not the only one.
Probably not.
Unanimously agreed we want to be in a consulting role, and Elaine, I heard, volunteered to take the lead.
Great, and I'll put it on the agenda for future outreach opportunities.
Perfect.
And I have just a small clarifying question, Susan. So they actually are looking at monuments all over the state of Washington, and they're looking at this one here in Vancouver. Is this consulting role just for the one here in Vancouver, I'm assuming?
That's my understanding, yes. Okay, so we'll respond to Ms. Chapman and let her know of your involvement and introduce you through email to Elaine.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
No, Susan, I want to ask, is the dialogue in place only with reference to, or,
No.
so I was looking if you could put that,
It's tribal consultation and community engagement.
great, because I remember a couple months ago, we had the young man who was interested in finding a ditch project near Hawkinson. And it made me think that there's another underrepresented community that deserve attention. Next, we'd like to welcome Teresa Brum, Ryan Laposa, and Michael Walker, who are here in person to discuss the Main Street Promise Project. Welcome.
These mics on?
They are.
It sounds like, right? For us to begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Teresa Brum. You guys want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ryan Laposa. I'm the city's transportation manager.
My name is Michael Walker. I'm the executive director of the Vancouver's Downtown Association.
And we're joined online by Julie Ahrens. Julie also works for the city, and she is this project's small business project manager. And in the audience, I'm very happy to say we have Linda Glover, and Linda's a former city council person who is a huge champion for this project and for downtown, and I think one of the main reasons that it has funding today, and so it's great to have her here as well. We have quite a few slides. I think we'll go through them fairly quickly, though, Let's see, do I advance or do I say next? Right.
Ms.
So,
Brum, would you please repeat the name? I got Linda Glover. Who else are we welcoming online?
Julie Ahrens, A-R-E-N-Z,
Julie, one more time on the last name.
A-R-E-N-Z.
Okay, thank you. I keep handwritten notes, and I want to
Oh,
make
good
sure
for you.
that I get everybody included. Thank you.
So we'll start with a project background and overview. We'll go into our goals, priorities, and timeline, and preliminary design ideas. And then we thought you'd be interested to get an update on where we are in the historic preservation process and the 106 process. And then we'll go into public outreach and Vancouver's Downtown Association's role, and then end with Q&A and discussion. Next slide, please. So where have we been? This project is 30 years in the making, and actually, I think 108 years since there was a full treatment of Main Street, paving and sidewalks and all of it. And then 30 years ago, it was first conceived that we needed to have that infrastructure replaced. You can see a lot of starts, a lot of good ideas, but no execution until 2021, when our city council identified it as one of the primary projects for our ARPA recovery funding. And so with that funding as the basis for this project, we were able to move it forward and get a design contract, and that is where we are today. Next slide, please. In general, the project runs from 5th to 15th on Main Street and includes a full reconfiguration of the roadway, utilities, parking, sidewalks, adjacent outdoor spaces from curb to curb. And as I said, the funding, it comes from the American Rescue Plan Act and also from local funds. Next slide, please. This is called the Main Street Promise Project, and that's reflective of this 30 years in the making idea and the fact that we have talked this to death, but we are now promising this project will get built. And it has 3 elements: to be safe, accessible, and connected. And I'll just let you read the rest. So next, please. We're particularly emphasizing the City Council's 2 top priorities for climate action and also for diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can also read these priorities, but in particular, number 4 is historic preservation, which is a great climate action goal, emphasizing the reuse of existing structures. Next slide, please. And our engagement that you'll hear Michael Walker talk about is very extensive and inclusive and really prioritizes equity and doing a lot of outreach. And so that's one reason that we're here today. We've made a commitment to keep the HPC informed. And we were before you, I think, once before, and we'll come back again. And we want to make sure that you know what's going on. Next slide. I'll turn it over to Ryan Laposa.
All right, thanks, Teresa. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project design, the various elements of the project. One of the things, when we met with our city council and we met with our Transportation Mobility Commission and started to have conversations with various groups, the common theme that we heard from those groups was, let's think more about how we can move people through the Main Street corridor and not necessarily vehicles. And so they really wanted us to be bold and really think outside the box. And so you'll see how that has unfolded with the design. A big element was trying to widen the sidewalks, provide wider sidewalks along the corridor so that folks can not only walk along the corridor, but the sidewalk areas can be used for a number of different uses, parking of bikes, street furnishings, potentially outdoor seating areas for some of the food and drinking establishments, and just a way for folks to come down and experience Main Street, not necessarily come down to pass through. with an emphasis on pedestrians, we wanted to make sure we're addressing the crossings in a way that improves safety. And then, like I said, just considering new elements that would better activate the corridor: furniture, lighting, outdoor seating, bike parking, public art, and of course, landscaping. Being mindful of our climate action strategy, we want to bring new LED streetlights. That's become a theme throughout the city. We're updating the 3 existing traffic signals just to be consistent with our modern standards. And then we're using this as an opportunity to upgrade what's underneath the street. New stormwater facilities, new sewer facilities, new water facilities. And then finally, when it's all said and done, Main Street gets new pavement and new striping. Next slide, please. So this is a project timeline. The yellow arrow is more or less where we're at. We're a little further along because we're almost to open house number 2, which is tomorrow evening. And so what we've really been doing is working our way through the design. We're about at a 60% completion of the design, so really starting to iron out those details. Extensive amount of outreach. We've had our first open house. We'll have a second one tomorrow. We've been talking with businesses and property owners up and down the corridor, and really just beginning to understand how this project can unfold in a way that minimizes impacts to those folks along the corridor. That's been a challenge with other projects in the downtown, coming in and opening up the street or, redoing the sidewalks and still keeping those doors open to those businesses and keeping that foot traffic moving. So that's a big element that we'll really be fully transitioning into in the coming months. Next slide. So what we look at when we look at Main Street is we look at how we can treat what we call the streetscape, which is the area between the curb and the building. The street will still have travel lanes. It'll still have one lane in each direction. It'll still have on-street parking, although we are going to change the angled parking that exists out there now. On one side, we're going to change that to parallel, and again, that helps us to create wider sidewalks. But once we get off the street, then we're starting to look at what we can do with the streetscape. And we've divided that up into 4 zones. One is a walk-off zone. That's the area right next to where the cars park. So it's literally as you get out of the car, you walk onto the sidewalk. And then a furnishing zone, so an area where you might see different types of furnishings. The pedestrian zone, this is the place where we actually, are deliberate about making sure it's open and complete for pedestrians to move through the corridor. And then up next to the building is a small area, what we call the building zone, which could be another place where you might see some furnishings, you might see a small amount of outdoor seating. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a curbside walk-off zone, and what you can do with that is you can use material and surface and texture to create that zone, not only to make it visible, but also to make it tangible to folks who might have vision challenges. So it really helps for folks to understand where is that dividing line between the sidewalk area and the street. And that's really important on Main Street because one of the elements that we're introducing, and I'll talk more about it in a bit, is a curbless design. So we're not going to have curbs on Main Street. It's going to be the same level all the way across. And so it's really important that we identify, where does the sidewalk stop and the parking begin and the street begin. And that's what this walk-off zone helps us to do. Next slide. The furnishing zone, again, that small area between the walk-off zone and the active sidewalk where we can introduce all sorts of different elements to activate the corridor. It can be heavy on the landscaping side, more like a linear park, or we can have furnishings, we can have outdoor seating. We're looking at opportunities for art. We have right now 4 major art installations along the corridor that we're going to preserve and put back. We'll take them away for a short time while we do the work, and then we'll bring them back. But we're also looking for opportunities to add additional art along the corridor because there's this opportunity, this space where we can take advantage of that. And then just, just a place where folks can come and gather, and, just enjoy the corridor. Next slide, please. The pedestrian zone, this is one of the more important places, and so this is the area where pedestrians move through the corridor. And again, using different types of texture and treatment and material to really emphasize that zone, and also emphasize where folks may want to cross that zone, where they might be crossing, they've parked their car, they've gotten out, and they're coming into one of the businesses. So providing some designation as to where that might happen as well. Next slide. And then this is the building zone I talked about. And so this is the area right next to the building where you might see some additional outdoor seating. You might see some sidewalk cafe seating and things like that, especially in those areas where we have folks that serve food and drink. Next slide. As I mentioned, art's a big part of the project, and so we look to these places that we're setting aside in the streetscape for opportunities for art, but we also look at just other opportunities that exist down there now. We were talking about this the other day, and there's something like 35 different pieces of art in one form or another along the corridor. There's murals, there's little things in the sidewalk, and so we're really working hard to preserve those and then build upon those. And with an eye to being able to tell a story, to recognize the role Main Street has played, like Teresa said, 100 plus years of it being out there and all of the changes that we've seen, but recognizing why Main Street is so important to our community. So art is a big thing for us, and we're excited to be able to incorporate that into the project. Next slide. Of course, business customization. We've had lots of conversations with various businesses about how they might use the space in front of their business, whether it be seating, whether it be advertising, or being able to put some of their product out there, just different ways that they can activate their business, activate their storefronts. And so that's a big part of what Main Street is about, is making it more exciting for the businesses and for their customers that are coming and visiting them. Next slide, please. So this is kind of what we call our active middle. So we've got three different concepts, that we look at with the streetscape. The first is the active middle, and that's really putting a lot of the treatments in that area right next to the curb. The furnishings, the art, the bikes, lighting, things like that, and then putting the sidewalk, up closer to the building, but really relying on that space to maximize that zone. One of the things you see in this picture is overhead lighting. So in addition to the street lights that we would also have some type of overhead, what we call catenary lighting. And it's really just a way to create more of a unique atmosphere, something that we've seen in other communities that really makes the corridor pop, and it makes it an exciting place to be, especially in the evening. And so this shows what that could look like in conjunction with the other elements of the street. Next slide. And then this is just more of those elements, different lighting, different textures, and then this idea of integrating art into the corridor, programming art, having rotating art, having art that might spend some time at Main Street, and then it might go to a different location, and then we're just rotating it through. Next slide. So again, the curbless festival street that we call it. Curbless, if it doesn't strike a tone with you, think of Esther Street in the farmers market. That was intentional, not to have a curb, to make it very, very easy and accessible for folks to walk throughout the street and not be tripping over curbs. And that's really what we're going to accomplish here. I was having a conversation with a gentleman today, and the idea is maybe Main Street is closed down for a day for some type of a festival, maybe for a run, a marathon. But maybe someday Main Street is closed down because cars are just not as important on that corridor as they might be right now. And so we're really setting the stage for folks that come in after me to be able to do that and not to have major obstacles that they would have to remove in order to make that happen. So it just becomes a very easy place to be, minimal obstacles for folks to move around, and just very accessible. Next slide. Okay, Teresa, that's you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So next, we're going to really dig into some of the details of the historic preservation process. And this is back to me because in addition to working in economic development, which I have been working for the past 15 years, prior to that, I worked for 15 years in historic preservation, and I have a degree in historic preservation, and I meet the federal criteria as a preservation professional. So we're going to dig into the Section 106 review process, which I think is fascinating, and I'm sure you share this with me. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 says that if there is a federal undertaking of any kind, there has to be an assessment to see if there's an impact on historic buildings or any resources. And if there is an impact, is it negative? And if there is a negative impact, how can it be mitigated? And so for this project, we are using AINW as the consultant. And this is an outline of the work so far. I'll talk to you about the scope of their work and the determination of the APE, and then their survey and reporting methodology that includes both archaeological resources and the historic built environment, and then next steps. Next. So the APE is the area of potential effect, and that's determined in consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office. So you saw on the map early on that our project boundaries are 5th to 15th. And so in general, everyone agreed that that's also the APE. And so that's the area also that's being considered for impact on historic properties. In general, the APE follows the facades of the buildings on Main Street, and it includes the exterior building entrances, because there may be ADA grading proposed to meet those entrances. It includes temporary construction permits that might be needed on private property to facilitate the project, and it also includes ADA improvements. The project goes north and south, but on east-west cross streets, utility work will be done within existing rights-of-way, but there's no permanent right-of-way acquisition for the project. So essentially, there's no change in the street, just in the surfaces and in the elements on the surfaces. Next. So the next thing that AINW did was a search of all of the databases to determine what's already been identified as historic. And so the first thing they found, and Jan Bader will attest to this, this area has been studied in the past. It's been studied for several different projects. For the first time, the bridge was considered, and for other street projects in the area. And so what they then started to look at was what's already been identified. And so in terms of archaeological resources, what they found is that there are few pre-contact archaeological resources, which makes sense because it's been paved. So pretty much any site has been paved over at this point, and archaeological sites would be more typically found in the waterways like the Columbia River, Vancouver Lake, or Burnt Bridge Creek. Next. So also in their search of previous databases, they looked at the historic built environment. And so in that research, most of the buildings within or adjacent to the area of potential effect have been previously documented and are in the state's Wizard database. And so the National Register listed properties in the project corridor include the Evergreen Hotel, the U.S. National Bank Building, which is known as the Heritage Building, the Elks Building, which is more commonly known as the Biggs Insurance Building, the Kiggins Theater, and then the Hidden Houses on 13th and Main. So those are all buildings that have been previously listed on the National Register. They don't, for this process, take into consideration the fact that this is a historic overlay. They're focusing on National Register or eligible properties. Next. So that's what was identified in the past, but you know, that can change because they need to look at any property that's over 50 years old. And so in terms of archaeological resources, an archaeological pedestrian survey is being completed. And I wrote will be, but this work is underway and actually could be already finished by now, but when I was writing this, it was underway. So the pedestrian survey is underway, and that'll verify existing conditions that they need for reporting under Section 106. Let's see. And then again, as I said, because the streets are already paved, they're not going to dig up streets to look for archaeological resources underneath. And so instead, they're doing background research. Additionally, several buildings along Main Street have decorative entryways, and so those have the potential to be impacted and because of regrading efforts. And so the project will need to take efforts to avoid impacting those features, and that will influence the methodology that we go about this project with. Next slide. Then they looked at the historic built environment. And so in that survey, which is either underway or completed, and I think, Michael, didn't you say that you saw people on the street who looked like they were doing assessment work? So that part of it's already been done. So they'll identify historic resources that could be buildings, sites, structures, objects, and districts, potential districts, that were built at least 45 years ago within the area of potential effect. And trying to read that. I'm going to read it from my slide instead. And on parcels that are crossed by the area of potential effect to assess the project's potential that it might have on historic properties. So those architectural historians have already been out there observing and reporting on the potential for a historic district that might include the historic resources, but I think that we all know that it has been determined that there wasn't a national district potential on Main Street. There just weren't enough intact buildings. Additionally, though, because they're not just looking at buildings, they're also looking at objects. And so they're in particular looking at historic streetscape features, which they're defining as small-scale elements of the streetscape. And those will be separately identified for consideration. And so the idea will be that the project should avoid or restore such features, and they might include sidewalk stamps. And those are not typically documented as individual historic resources, but might help define the character of the streetscape or a potential historic district. The survey of historic streetscape features will be done in consultation with the Clark County Historical Museum. And Brad is very interested in helping identify these features, and I think he's already volunteered and is pretty excited about working with AINW on the features. So next, to kind of give you a sense of what's happening next. So they've done the background research. They know what buildings and features have been identified in the past as National Register listed or eligible. And now they're updating all of those survey reports and potentially coming up with some new eligible properties. There might be some mid-century modern buildings that they might identify that haven't been identified in the past. So it'll be interesting to see. I think, Susan, we have copied you on their reports in the past, and so we'll continue to send those over to you so that the commission can stay in the loop about those reports. And the museum will be involved in mitigation, and so the next step will really be to see if they've found any new properties that they think are eligible, and to see then if those will be negatively impacted in some way. And then if they are, by Section 106 federal law, then there has to be some mitigation of that impact.
Are they also taking into consideration locally listed properties or just national?
Well, I think on Main Street, there are some locally listed properties, so I'll make sure that those are in the report as well. Yeah. Next, I'll turn it over to Michael Walker. Although Michael is not a city employee, he has now been granted that temporary status because he's so involved in this project and really key to the project and especially to our outreach work. So he's going to talk about our community engagement.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you for having me today. So our community engagement plan, this is a once in a several generation project, and there's a huge opportunity for community members to really make an impact on the design as we move forward. One of the ways in which they can do that is during one of our open houses. As mentioned earlier, there's one happening tomorrow at the Vancouver Library from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll be reviewing the 60% design phase and also encouraging input regarding streetscape furnishings, lighting, and general placemaking activation throughout the corridor. In conjunction with that, we've also been hosting a project advisory group made up of about, 16 members, I believe. It's a stakeholder group made up of a variety of interests ranging from property owners, residents, folks who live in downtown, folks who work in downtown, folks who visit downtown, adjacent institutions like Clark College, a diverse array of socioeconomic backgrounds. So it's a really great cross-section of our community, offering really direct feedback throughout the entire design phase process. And they are meeting a total of 4 times, I believe, across the project to give input on, textures and insight regarding from their stakeholdership in the community. We'll also be engaging and have engaged boards and commissions, of course, the Historic Preservation Commission here today, the Cultural Heritage and Art Heritage Commission, the Urban Forestry Commission, and the Transportation and Mobility Commission. So we're ensuring that we're meeting with all the stakeholder groups throughout downtown to get their very tailored feedback to the project and the process and the streetscape elements as we move forward. In conjunction with that, we've been engaging folks on our social media and our website, primarily through the Be Heard Vancouver page, which is the primary platform for the City of Vancouver to receive public input. It's their digital portal. There's opportunities to submit public content or comment and to get engaged on the project through a variety of ways. We have a monthly meeting, which is our downtown stakeholders meeting. It occurs, I believe, the third. We recently rescheduled it. It's the third Tuesday of every month from 1 to 2 p.m. It's a virtual format, and we host the project team with McKay Spacito, and sometimes the urban design team with First 40 Feet and City of Vancouver staff in conjunction with Vancouver's Downtown Association to give updates on the project and to also solicit feedback and to field questions from the community. So that's a once every 4 weeks opportunity. We also have signage on Main Street. So every block we have some signage kind of going over the project history, the FAQ, how to get engaged, an opportunity to scan a QR code to provide direct feedback regarding placemaking elements. So these signs promote both engagement, but also encourage community process for the project. Next slide, please. We're also doing a lot of social media posts between the City of Vancouver and the Vancouver's Downtown Association. We have a combined following of, 30+ thousand folks in conjunction with our listservs and our websites. It reaches a pretty large cross-section of the Vancouver community and abroad. And as mentioned earlier, we have the monthly stakeholders forum updates, and we are working actively to engage the business community. We've been doing almost weekly canvassing along the corridor and adjacent areas to ensure that business owners are well aware of the project and that they're engaging with the project. And even things like, what do you want in front of your business? Do you want street furniture? Do you want a bench? Things for consideration, essentially. In tandem with that, during construction, we'll have weekly coffee corners where we'll have project staff available for the public to meet, tailored mostly towards merchants and property owners, but also residents and the general public to ask questions about the project. Specifically, like if one week we're doing sidewalks, they'll have an opportunity to learn about the exact phasing of that element within the project and what to expect, and also an opportunity to voice concerns, questions, so on and so forth. We'll also have a block captain program happening where each block from 5th to 15th will have a designated individual representing that block. We are working with merchants. So, for example, 800 block will be the Vancouver's Downtown Association, and that will be me being the block captain for that block. It will be connecting with our neighbors and ensuring that they're well informed of the project and to help field any questions or concerns related to the project. VDA will also be offering a grant program called Bricks and Clicks. It's a grant program offering businesses and property owners the opportunity to either do visibility enhancements to their frontage, small facade improvements, and also e-commerce improvements to their websites or social media platforms to encourage online activity during construction to help them increase their sales and to help us retain our businesses during construction. Next slide. So our next steps, as I mentioned earlier, open houses tomorrow. We really encourage the folks listening today and the commission to attend if your capacity permits. We'll be working to finalize a 60% design phase, and then we'll be starting with our summer business outreach program, which is ongoing and kind of ties more into what I mentioned earlier with door-to-door canvassing, delivering press releases, fielding questions, ensuring folks are well engaged, working with property owners to ensure that their tenants are well aware of the project. The tricky thing is with this project is, you have merchants, but then you also have folks who are in denser buildings like Main Place that are 10 stories tall. So encouraging or ensuring that all tenants, regardless of property site, are well engaged and informed of the project.
I got the time wrong. It's 4 to 6, not 4 to 5.
4 to 6.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks for catching that, Teresa. Next slide. So here's some really excellent takeaways that we've taken into account during our outreach process, and these come directly from community members. And here's just some quick statements so you guys can kind of get a baseline for where the community stands so far. One person said, encourage design team to think big and ensure this investment in Main Street reflects the priorities for the future. And that kind of touches on what Ryan was talking about earlier, is we're not just designing the streetscape for today, we're designing the streetscape for the next 100 years or more. So creating an adaptable streetscape is key. Be aware of impacts to individuals in wheelchairs and others with mobility and visual limitations. Please allow for a clear linear path for accessibility. And this point in particular is taken into strong consideration. Main Street will be highly accessible after this project is completed. Please prioritize walking or riding a bus or a bike. Please don't be afraid to lead us away from the current car culture. Bike racks and benches should be works of art and variety. And I want to recreate the heyday of retail activity on Main Street. So this is a really good cross-section of the feedback that we've been receiving from residents, property owners, and business owners. And the project, for the most part, has been really well received, and people are quite excited and are excited to be a part of this project that will be quite transformative for Vancouver and the Main Street District as a whole. Next slide, please. And questions and comments. So above, you'll see our contact information along with our titles, and feel free to reach out within the respective capacity that you have a question, and we'll be sure to field it to the best of our ability.
Is there a Vancouver Main Street Promise page on the city's website?
Yeah.
It's on the Be Heard platform.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had that somewhere here.
So So you have to go through Be Heard.
Mhm.
Okay.
When you go to Be Heard, the Be Heard page, it's on the homepage of that website, but it goes over even things related to like project history and past planning documents, and it's really contextual,
Yeah,
which is
if
quite
you
interesting.
If you start with Be Heard Vancouver, though, you'll
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
Good question, Jan.
Well, I found this very fascinating. Thank you so much for coming and presenting, and it was very thorough. I really liked it. Like to hear the different phases that you talked about. I actually had a couple of questions. I'm just curious about the no curb. I'm sure you get lots of questions about it. What about things like water flow and, you know, the purpose of gutters? So without gutters, tell us more about kind of that.
Yeah, so it's, you know, yeah, when you think of the curbs, that's where all the water goes, and then it runs along the curb into the inlets. And so what we can do is we create what we call little valley gutters, and they'll actually be closer to the outside of the parking lane. So between the travel lane and the parking lane, there'll be a little valley gutter. So the parking lane will actually drain back out towards the street. The street will drain towards the valley gutter. The valley gutter will grab all of that and then bring it down and put it into an inlet. So, when we did the Esther Street between 6th and 8th, that's actually grades to the middle of the street. So all the drainage is right down the middle of the street. But if you go out to the waterfront and to Waterfront Way, it also has somewhat of a curbless design, and that's how that works, is it goes into those little valley gutters next to the parking strips.
Yeah, it does have an elegance to it, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just creates such it's a unique look. You know, it's a different type of street, not something folks are used to seeing. And when you start to have things out there that are not all about cars, it's so nice not to be worrying about tripping over curbs.
Right.
We had the Shamrock Run down at the waterfront this spring, and I was down there, and there were so many people. It was so exciting to have so many people come out, and that was one of the things is I just sat back and watched as people moved about. Nobody was worrying about tripping over anything.
Right.
They're just moving around, enjoying themselves, and that's really what we're looking for here.
Another
I
question.
want to add before you go on to the next thing. We have an exciting surprise at our open house tomorrow. Our consultants have prepared a 3D flyover of Main Street, and you'll be able to see it at the open house, and that's where you can really see what the curbless streets are going to look like. It's pretty amazing to be able to see that, so hope you can attend.
Do you have to be on time? I mean, it's not like a show up between 4 and 6, it's show up at 4.
Anytime, and it's only about 3 minutes long. And
Oh, so you can't
anytime
show
you
up
come,
throughout. Okay.
it'll probably be playing on a
Anytime you
loop.
want.
Oh, okay.
The video will be running on a continuous loop, and then there'll be lots of different stations. We're actually going to have some samples of some of the furnishings and the lighting that we're going to put in. You'll be able to see what that lighting looks like. You'll see what those furnishings look like. You'll be able to sit on them
Okay.
and so forth. So really cool stuff.
And the open house, I keep interrupting you, sorry, but the open house is also an opportunity to make comments like, you know, the ones that we read at the end. And so if you want to come and comment on the historic properties, on the importance of historic preservation in the street, then we'll be writing down those comments, and those go into the record. And so it's really a good chance to be an advocate as well. Plus, it's fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. The other thing I wanted to ask, and this seems obvious, but I just want to clarify for myself. Obviously, there's going to be kind of 2 lanes, right? One each way. Are those also going to be bike lanes? Because it seems there aren't really there's not room for bike
Yeah,
lanes.
we don't, unfortunately, we're fixed by the buildings,
Mhm.
you know, so we can't really make anything any wider, and we're trying to maximize that sidewalk width. So what we're doing is we're creating a space that we call a shared use facility, or a SHARO. So the lanes will be used by cars, but then they'll also have symbols on the pavement that highlight that there's also cyclists that'll be on there. And the speed limit on Main Street in that section is only 20 miles an hour, and we're doing a lot to emphasize a slower speed environment. We've got what are called bulb outs at each of the intersections, so they're little curb extensions that come out and make the crossing shorter for folks to get across the street, but it also creates a narrowing effect that just tells folks it's a little tighter here and I need to kind of slow down. So the idea is just, make it very safe, make it very slow.
Great. And then I have just more of a comment, or, well, maybe a question/comment. I know you said that you're going to be working with the Clark County Historic Museum for mitigation purposes. But for those things that are in the overlay, I think it would also be appropriate and appreciated to come to us as well, because they are in the overlay and we have guidance that we can also provide. And I'm sure you've already read the overlay guidance, so you probably already know it. But just, it would be nice to be also involved in any of those conversations too. I think
Thank you for that reminder. Yeah. We'll be back probably at around 90%.
Yeah.
Like, the end of the year, I think, when we'll have a really good sense of exactly what's going to be done on every block.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you again.
Anything?
Oh, I'm going to the event tomorrow, so right now I'm just going to say everything looks really great. I recently toured another location that was downtown of Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is the home of the U.S. Paralympic Training Center. And comparing this to what they've been doing down there to make their whole city accessible, it's really cool to see how everything's evolving and making it more friendly and accessible for everyone and engaging. And this all looks really cool, so I can't wait to see what you all have for tomorrow.
Thank you.
My question was, in the sample pictures, permitting kits of parts, business customization, and the storefronts, are those real places that you looked at?
With the reference images?
Yes.
Yeah. I think just the general reference images. From my understanding, I believe those are best practices pulled by the urban.
Yes. Yes.
They're all real.
So for instance, the 4 zones, pedestrian zone, building zone, curbside.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are all real.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you go back to that business customization, one of those pictures in the upper right-hand side, those are the parklets that were created during the pandemic. I think that's outside of
Mighty Bowl.
Mighty Bowl. So yeah, we were able to grab some local as well as some regional and national examples.
It really showcases the possibilities of how the core will transform over the next few years.
I think if there was a good thing that came out of the pandemic, it was the idea that you can transform that outdoor space into a lot of different things. You can make it exciting, you can make it so that it's useful year-round. And so we knew going into this project that was going to be a big element, was what to do without outdoor space, and how can we activate the corridor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Am I okay to go?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Unless you want to stay.
No, I have an encore coming up here.
Good.
Okay, so we're really excited to announce that Revitalize Washington will be coming to downtown Vancouver, October 4th to 6th. Revitalize Washington is Washington State's annual statewide conference focused on continued care of place through historic preservation, placemaking, and economic development. And it's in partnership with the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, Vancouver's Downtown Association, and the City of Vancouver. So Revitalize WA essentially allows for preservationists, planners, and downtown development professionals, and anyone who cares about place to dive deep into creative ideas, build their network, and to inspire new solutions. And I believe I crossed paths with some folks here at the last Revitalize Washington conference in Wenatchee, which was really fun and exciting. So that was a good opportunity, and here I am in the flesh, working in partnership with you folks. It's a great opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals. So workshops and field sessions will be hosted across the entire downtown district with a strong lens to preservation. So many of the spaces we are using are historic, like the Higgins Theater or the Academy, and a multitude of buildings across Officers Row, so on and so forth. We applied to recruit the conference in 2022, and we secured the bid. And as mentioned previously, it was last held in Wenatchee in October of 2022, and it had a significant impact on their Main Street corridor, approximately $200,000 worth of sales over the course of 72 hours. So one of the reasons why VDA worked to recruit this conference this year in particular was to help, with the Main Street project, to help get some additional traffic right before the shovels go into the ground. And also to highlight the great progress we've made as a community since the last time we held the conference, which was in 2013, about 10 years ago. And I received an email, and I know it was there was a large interest in seeing how the commission can partner with us to do outreach during the conference. And Andrew, I know that you applied as well to have a Meet Me at the Kiggin session, which we're really excited about as well. And I just kind of want to open the forum on that to see what kind of outreach you guys are interested in doing. I was able to touch base with our conference planners, and they said there will be opportunities to work in partnership with the conference planners to maybe develop some networking sessions, encouraging specific groups to pull together their own happy hours, luncheons, in tandem with the event. And yeah, so I'm just kind of want to open the forum to see how we can help facilitate that.
When you opened, Michael, you said that it was for planners, preservationists, and one other group, and it went by me.
Let me see. Downtown development professionals and anyone who cares about place.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. We received a total of 60 session proposals and field session proposals, and we narrowed it down to 40. Right now on the website, preservewa.org, it's on their homepage. Here we have it pulled up for the meeting. We have the field sessions listed, but the agenda at large, it's still being developed and should be released here within the next few weeks. And here's kind of like a high-level overview of how the conference will break out. So any questions from the commission? And also just kind of curious how we can help facilitate you guys with some networking events and maybe working to connect you folks to the broader preservation community in the state of Washington. And I can also work to facilitate a call with Lydia Felty, who's helping us do the state planning component of it.
These are all really good questions.
Yeah.
And a little early.
A little bit of a fire hose. Yeah.
I don't have any specific feedback right now. I'm really interested in seeing the agenda.
Definitely, yeah.
Which may help inform us of some natural slots or some natural,
definitely.
Places where we could participate or be involved.
Yeah, they have like the opening receptions and
Right.
things like that as well, which we could easily incorporate a section for
Yeah.
statewide preservation groups to mingle at as well. And
Yeah, and even, I'm thinking back to Wenatchee, even some of the field trips that people went on, having maybe people on the Historic Preservation Commission attend some,
definitely.
or just if people have questions about things in relation to our historic preservation in our own town.
Well, that'd be
We could
excellent.
be there,
Yeah.
we can figure something out, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure yet without an agenda, but
Yeah.
I do think it's a great, thank you for coming and asking us,
Yeah.
and I do think it would be helpful for us to continue talking about how we can do some outreach.
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. I think that off the top of my head with field sessions, we have a really special Confluence Project feature.
What is it?
The Confluence Project with the land bridge and kind of going over that process, and also with Officers Row, some site tours there as well, which could be a good dovetail
Yeah.
for that.
Well, that could flow really into, they have the new winery down there, so go straight into a networking cocktail hour.
That's a great idea. I like that.
One concern that I personally had, I went into Revitalize Washington last year nearly blind
Yeah.
what I was going to be experiencing. And I remember talking with my fellow commissioners that I was a little surprised at the amount of information we were given about removing the historic past in order to revitalize towns and city centers, the keynote address in particular. And I think my big concern for this year is making sure that we have a balance of preserving what we have and not trying to erase or wash it out
Mm-hmm.
to make way for new and improved spaces, but to marry the beauty that we already have and the history that we have with these new organizations and these new businesses that we want to build and grow and develop, quite like we're doing with the Main Street program.
Definitely. And that's a really good point, Elaine. And I definitely appreciate you making that, and I'll deliver that feedback to the conference planners as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
Bart, did you have a question?
Well, just two thoughts came to mind as I was looking at this schedule. Number one, I mean, Susan and I have already talked about, you know, wanting to be involved as much as we can, given that we have staff duties and things like that. So to tag on to what Julie just said, the sooner we can see a fleshed out agenda, the sooner we can know how we could legitimately help in a staff capacity.
Definitely.
So that's one thing. The other thing, Andy and Jan, I'm seeing is that there's activities going on the first Wednesday of the month in the evening there. And so it's probably not too early to start thinking about how we would want to either have our meeting at a different time or dovetail into the activities of the conference, do something that leveraged it. So
It might be fun to do a community conference where we had our meeting, but didn't have things that we needed to vote on or discuss, and bring members of Revitalize Washington into it to discuss what we do, how we vote on things, the process that we have here. That could be very interesting on the first Wednesday.
I like that
Well,
idea.
People will skip the, you know, plenary session and the
Yeah.
open reception to
well, that,
the
yeah,
commission meeting.
that's what I was thinking, is if we could, you know, try to do something that
Probably better to just move the meeting.
move the meeting. Yeah, I know we've had meetings in other places in the past, but it's hard with these hybrid meetings to do it in a different location. We can, but it's just something to start thinking about now.
One other just question, I can't really, it's really tiny on here, and it's
No worries.
not dark enough to see it.
No.
I can't really tell what's going on, but
Right.
we often, I know that we have an art walk here or
Mhm.
museum walk. I'm not sure what day of the month that is, but is.
Yeah,
I
first
was-
Friday of every month, yeah.
So is the first one?
It's the first Friday of every month is our monthly
Oh, okay.
art walk, and it will be aligning with October 6th.
Okay, good.
So we're encouraging folks to stay a little bit later into that day to experience
Okay.
downtown.
And are we having a photo booth? I know they did that in one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I
And-
definitely have been thinking about that.
That was like a fun.
It was really
for
cool.
Everybody, and people had said they had done it in previous.
Yeah, yeah.
Revitalize Wa-
I'll definitely keep that top of mind. I'll bring that into the loop during our next meeting.
Or is the Hilton going to be that like headquarters, or is there,
Yeah, they're our primary anchor hotel for the room blocks. We also have room blocks at the Indigo Hotel on the waterfront.
but, so, and normally Revitalize WA doesn't use a hotel.
Right.
It's their
Yeah, so,
meeting space.
and that's a good point, Jan. So yeah, we're leveraging spaces throughout the community. We're not using so much the conference space at the Hilton. We want to touch on the historic properties and using spaces throughout the community for the workshops and the field session start-off points.
Do you have, I don't know if you can speak about this yet until the list is finalized and it's announced, so
Mhm.
let me know if you can't say. But are there any sessions about this kind of that intersection between kind of what Elaine was saying, like here are examples of how preservation has worked to revitalize, and we've kept these buildings and we've done these structures, and here's how it hasn't worked, where we've removed these buildings, built parking lots, and is there any kind of, anything around, not that specific, but anything like that that's been presented to you all?
I think I'll need to look into that and get back to you on that.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
No.
I think we're down to 40 total submittals. So let me kind of work through the list
Yeah,
one more time to see
no
if
worries.
there touches on that. But I'm sure there were some interesting placemaking ones that I think touched on those elements, but I'm not sure in the same breadth as what was mentioned earlier, but I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also want to note, in partnership with this conference, I'm trying to think about the Monday and Tuesday leading up to the conference, as mentioned, you kind of see it on the first block of this calendar. It's the Community Transformation Workshop. This is right before the conference start, October 2nd and 3rd, and National Main Street is coming to Vancouver, Washington, which is a pretty awesome opportunity to host this transformation workshop.
Yeah.
And that'll be attracting folks from throughout the country to come to Vancouver to learn about placemaking best practices. I encourage folks listening today and the commission to look into that opportunity. It's an educational opportunity.
This is exciting, this
Yeah.
coming here.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
appreciate your partnership, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Continuing on, move to old business with updates and announcements. First item is an update on new member recruitment from BART.
But keep it short and sweet. The committee consisting of Jan and Morgan and Julie reviewed the 5 complete applications that we ended up receiving, and there was the need for 1 interview after that review process. That interview happened on the 30th, and as a result of the application reviews and that interview, 2 strong recommendations have gone to the City of Vancouver for their committee process, and so Jason knows more about that than I do. And then 1 strong candidate is being recommended to the county council through the separate route that goes to the county consent agenda, which is not, it doesn't have that middle step. So that very well could happen by the 27th when there's a consent agenda open for that. Did you want to add anything, Jason?
We have to forward the recommendation on to the council. We have a subcommittee, and they're deciding whether or not they will need to meet, and if they do, the likelihood is the formal recommendation wouldn't happen until the July 10th city council meeting, so that doesn't align exactly with the beginning of the new term. If the subcommittee does not meet, there is a likelihood that the city council could meet on the 26th of June to make their official recommendation. So I will keep you posted as we know more.
Thank you.
That's all we have right now.
Thank you. Continuing on, update on camp training, Susan?
Yes, just wanted to let you know we're working on paperwork, the contract with NAPC. And the main thing is, I'll also email all of you about this, but we need to start coming up with a list of other professionals and individuals you'd like to invite. So I'll ask you to all start thinking about that and ask you to email me. I'll send you an email tomorrow and email me back in the next week or so with ideas for who you would like to invite.
Susan, is there a limit on the total number?
Yes, there is a limit of 40.
Just was seeing how that aligned with the room capacity, but that's fine.
So do we already have already a list, right? We have the commissioners here, and then we have staff, but I don't know who all of the staff are. Is it possible to send us a list of we know we're going to invite these people, and then we can kind of add to that, so we're not trying to scramble to figure out.
City and county staff, I assume Jason will invite whoever he wants from the city, and these guys will figure out who's appropriate from the county, and
Mark should be there, and I'm seeing others. And maybe there's another planner that we also see from time to time.
Keith.
Yeah, thank you. It's once or once.
Academy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and then I think we want to invite
and then people, okay, so then the
Historic
other.
Trust, the Historic Museum.
Yeah.
I don't know if the National Park Service would send anybody, but it's worth inviting them.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Holly Chamberlain.
Well, she's with the trust, yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, yeah, just short and sweet as well, but I'll send you an email tomorrow.
And that has been finalized for the 18th of September.
15th, yep, yes.
And do we know the time frame?
Generally 8 to 5.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is an update from the subcommittee chairs. Thanks to our presenters this evening, Outreach has the Main Street Promise dialogue in place and Revitalize Washington, which would be 3 worthy pursuits for this summer and fall. Anything from you, Julie, on standards?
Yes. So we had a really excellent meeting. Jen, Susan, and Elaine and I to basically begin our design and standardized guidelines. And our approach is to first take a look at our current resources that we have on our website and to work together to refresh, in a sense, I'm going to use that word, refresh what we have, and then also make some pieces, add some pieces in and make it a little bit more robust. And we're drawing on some other commission websites to help us make those design changes. So that'll be one thing for us. And part of that will be, we wanted to get that renewed or refreshed in order to add guidance for property owners that are making, who are completing applications for certificates of appropriateness. So we had a really great meeting about our strategy moving forward, and we also are going to, we have two kind of main goals, and our first goal is what I just mentioned. So once we finish that, then we'll move on to our next goal, and that is to work on putting together a brief, I guess you could say, or some kind of communication document that we can address the city to help us renew, update, make stronger our code for our overlay district. That'll be after we first get these resources available to the public, and then we'll move on to that piece, and we'll be engaging more about that. That we don't have the strong parameters right now, but we know that that's something we want to approach. So one step at a time. But yeah, we had a really great meeting. We're moving forward, and we're going to try and meet every month from now until we don't need to.
Julie, who is your third member? I have you and Jan.
And Elaine and Susan.
Okay.
Hi.
Wanted to make sure I get it all down here. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Frazier's absence, so we'll pass on the.
I can update on the
Would you
demo.
like- oh,
I don't have much, but I have a meeting with Brad next week to talk about a potential location, storage location for photo documentation. Then I'm going to be meeting with Bart and Susan as well to talk about potentially using the county's GIS system as a storage location as well. So we'll know more. We'll have an update for you at the next meeting.
Thanks, Jason. Any further questions on subcommittees? The next item is for budget approval for updating commissionerships. Susan.
So I included an updated budget for 2023 in your materials. The only expenditure to date has been for the museum lecture series for $2,000. And so tonight I'm asking for your approval for the memberships that we've had in the past at the same levels, and those are shown in red on the budget for a total of $1,045.
Any comment?
Move to approve.
I second.
Second. Thanks. It's been moved and seconded that the budget be approved. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. I'm on this topic of the budget. So the DAP funds are going to completely cover the camp training, right?
Correct.
So we have almost $7,000 left in the budget. I'm assuming we're going to want to pay for commissioners to go to the Revitalize Washington conference, since it's in Vancouver.
Oh, right.
And I noticed when it was up on the screen that the early bird registration ends August 16th. So I think that we should consider that no later than the August meeting.
I think if,
We could
Yeah.
accept it now, couldn't we?
well, yeah, but I think if people just either let Susan know or come to the August meeting prepared to say whether they're interested in going or not, then it gives her an opportunity to register everybody before the.
You said it was August 16th?
16th was the early bird cutoff, yeah.
And my registration has been comped because I'm presenting. So that'll be
Excellent.
There you go.
savings there.
I was just going to ask that, Andy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Bart,
And there won't be a National Alliance of Preservation Commissioners conference this year because it's every other year.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that.
Yeah, that's every other year.
Mm-hmm.
There will be the National Historic Preservation Conference, which is in Washington DC this year, in November. Right.
Okay, get this down.
That raised the question about the July 5th meeting.
You're on.
We often don't have the meeting in July because it is so close to the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
So, didn't know. I mean, it's always awkward when the 4th of July is in the middle of the week, but,
Right.
right. I didn't know if we wanted to.
One other thing is that it sounds as if the city of Vancouver may not have,
Firework plans.
yes, that they may not have approved 2 commissionerships by then.
Oh, that too.
Is that, what did you say, Lynn? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was talking about the fireworks.
Concerned about fire.
Okay. I
Very
was-
important.
I was thinking about the wheels of government turning. So, Jason, when did you say the consideration might be?
Probably no more by the end of this week, so
Oh,
I can
okay.
let you know as soon as I know. It's either gonna be June 26th or not till July 10th.
So even if it's approved on the 26th, would the 2 commissioners be notified in time for July 5th?
I mean, they would find out, but would they be able to have
Probably wouldn't have orientation.
training and get
Exactly.
sworn in? Probably not.
So that's a consideration for not having a July meeting, so that we would,
And as of now, we don't have any city items, any projects
okay.
out there, so.
Bart?
Yeah, those were all the items that I was going to bring up. On top, 2 other things come to mind. Number one, it's not Jason's fault that they're late with the, with the appointments.
We didn't think so.
It's more that Susan and I are still learning this process and how far back to, post the notice and everything. So, assuming we'll get this figured out by next round, hopefully, and not be compressed against the July 1st. So apologies about that. And also, I will be, on vacation that week too.
Oh,
So,
that seals it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
so,
no meeting.
the world can't move without me and those other, yeah.
Yeah, we do actually usually part ways with July 5th,
Yeah.
or July. I looked back through our notes, and it has happened the last couple of years.
I think we had one last year
We
because
did.
of momentum.
Yeah, I was in New Orleans. It was my very first meeting.
I looked back, I swear it was canceled, but maybe
We'd have to look.
Because we had been back in person and in hybrid
Oh, that's, yeah.
after 26 months
Mm.
remote.
Yeah, I was sitting in a hotel room eating a very messy burger, glad that I could turn my camera off.
It's a good memory.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Do we want to, so Andy and I usually meet with staff a couple weeks ahead of the meeting to decide what's on the agenda. And do we want to just say we're planning on not having one in July, but if something pressing comes up, we'll know by whenever that is, 2 weeks ahead of time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would know by the 21st of June.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Sound good?
Yeah. And there couldn't be a, county application because we have a 30-day clock on the county, certificate of appropriateness, so.
So there wouldn't be a city one either, right? So,
Yeah, as of, like
So
I
we
was
just
saying, as
decide.
of now.
yeah, let's just call it.
Yeah.
Say no.
So noted.
Proposal to suspend business on July 5th. Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, I think we need a motion.
I think we do.
I don't think we do, but
I move to make a motion to not have a meeting on July 5th. Did someone second my moving of a motion?
sure, second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we have no meeting in July 2023. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All righty.
So then that means our next meeting will be
Pardon
in
me?
August, in July, in August.
August, that one.
Okay.
And we should hopefully get the new commissioners appointed and also be
Mhm.
able to do the orientation.
And we also did reach out to Janae Chapman with Washington Historical
Society.
Society, and we invited her. She couldn't make this meeting. I
Oh.
did offer the August meeting because I assumed July wouldn't happen, and she hasn't, I just did that today, so we may have a guest for
That'd be nice.
To talk about the monument on the historic site?
Yeah, 'cause I didn't see anywhere on their website time frame, what was happening when and who.
I mean, I started this process, 3 years ago. So it's
Wait.
been very slow,
Yeah. I'll keep.
more than 3 years ago.
Bringing a lot of people to the table. Talking takes a while.
I think it took them a while to figure out what, because ours isn't the only monument.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it took them, they didn't want to rush, and they wanted to get a structure in place about how they were going to handle all these monuments around the state.
And one of the workshops or one of the sessions that I attended, I think it was last year, my years blur together, but they did a presentation on it, on how they were going around and mapping or identifying and then documenting and putting it in a system.
Yeah, I think they needed to figure out how many pieces are we talking about here,
Mhm.
and who partners, and what's the process going to be. So it's taken a while.
Yeah. And it was really interesting too, because sometimes monuments just show up, right? Anybody can set up a monument. Like, my Uncle Joe was a great guy, and I want to set up a monument for him. And people did that throughout our history, right? And so it's also finding those, and who owns it, who maintains it, how, all those kind of logistical questions that,
They're specifically trying to focus on ones that they own.
that they own. Okay, good.
So,
Okay.
because there's a bunch of other ones in Vancouver
Great.
they don't own, but
Yeah. Anyway, that's great.
Moving on to good of the order, I wanted to thank the work on behalf of the subcommittees, especially membership recruitment, thank you colleagues, and also the design review and standards. And sometimes subcommittees can be ineffective, but I think ours are exemplary in terms of getting things done in a timely manner. So, good job, colleagues. Any others for good of the order? Thank you to staff, Jason and Bart and Susan. So,
Oh, I will add, Jackie says farewell.
Oh, what do you mean?
Did you receive my remembrance?
I did. It didn't make it into the PowerPoint, I don't think. I think, but Jackie saw it,
Oh, she did?
yeah.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay,
yeah.
wait.
Very nice.
Friday's her last day.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so Jackie's moving back to Virginia to be closer to family,
Oh,
and Friday is her last day.
my goodness, okay. Do people know this, that are sitting at this table, that don't work for the city or the county?
What's the question?
Oh, how did Commissioner Bond didn't know that Jackie was leaving?
Oh, yeah.
we talked about it at the subcommittee meeting. Because I told Susan she should be sure to find out from Jackie about the app and what had happened to it.
Oh, yeah.
She leaves.
Oh, I'm thinking like a vacation or a trip or something. Okay. Anyway, I will send her
Sorry, you didn't know.
farewell.
Send her a note.
Seeing no further business on the agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I will second this motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the meeting be adjourned. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Heidi, for attending.
Yeah.
Falafel place just down the corner. And notice they're really good, wrap.
Yeah, me either.
Eh,
I mean, around here, but then I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
no, my friend works just a couple